over, it goes downhill from here. So that just hurts my pride in a way that is not helpful. So it's weird, and I saw online that this is the new camera. So we've had tech issues this last year working with this space, and this is the camera, the new camera. It's kind of weird. It's like right here, and it looks like the thing that comes out of R2D2's head. Which it might be. I'm not sure. I don't know. And I just want to let y'all know that I am bribable. I got a present, okay? And that means that all y'all are just slacking, okay? So no, remember our discussion last week about coffee? And somebody who shall remain nameless was commenting, what's my favorite coffee? Texas pecan, but they said pecan terribly, like horribly wrong. But to atone for their sins, brought me this coffee. The Mexican chocolate. Oh, I'm just gonna sit here and you're gonna watch me smell this on. So.
Is it pecan coffee?
It's pecan. No, there's no pecan in here. Which we're grateful. Really. My wife likes making coffee. She's great. There's certain things that my wife can do without enjoying. It's interesting. Like she likes the smell of coffee, and so she'll make coffee, but she won't drink it. Does anybody do that? Sally, you do that? You make the coffee but don't drink it? And so she makes really good coffee, and I thank her for that because she is a morning person and I'm a night owl. I like being up, but I hate getting up, right? And so I can stay up late, and which is fine. The moment the sun goes down, she's like a reverse vampire. The moment the sun goes down, she starts going to sleep. But I can stay up as long as I want, but getting up in the morning is hard. And so she makes the coffee in the morning, and it makes me love her so much. There's nothing better in the world than waking up and not having to make coffee when you're super sleepy. But you want to have one of those coffee with the timers? Like she bought me a coffee pot with a timer on it. That thing gives me an anxiety attack. I don't know why. It's like, is the coffee on? Oh no, is the coffee on? And it makes me, I don't know if I just worry about the wrong things. And I'm up for, that's more about me. But so that's the other thing that my wife makes amazing, but she doesn't even, is it tinny again, Dorsey? Is it tinny? Perfect, okay. Dorsey's my sound guy. So, the other thing my wife makes, she's exceptional at, but doesn't even try, doesn't even taste, is guacamole. Anyone? How many of you? I didn't realize this is a divisive issue. How many of you don't like guacamole at all? So weird. Is it because of the color? Like I didn't try it until I was in my teenage years because I didn't like the way it looked. It looked like green gunk. What? Hard pea soup. That's exactly. That's the northern name for it. So.
The Mexicans really make guacamole because of spoiled avocado.
Yep. So, okay, funny story about avocados. I'm colorblind, and so I don't see certain colors very well, which leads to fun and interesting circumstances. Like when we're driving on the road, there's a flashing. I was gonna flashing and blinking. When there's a flinking light and it's red or yellow, I can't tell the difference. So I'm driving and I'm like, I tell my wife, is it red or yellow? Is it red or yellow? I don't know because I can't tell. When I was in kindergarten, I saw my first avocado. I was in Mrs. Martinez's class at Sam Houston Elementary in Del Rio, Texas. Okay, and I watched her cut open the avocado and pop it open. And so I know it was fresh. It wasn't like it was a bad avocado. It was a fresh avocado because I watched her open it up. But because I'm colorblind, it didn't look green to me. It looked brown. And so I thought, so that's where peanut butter comes from. I spent, like I didn't put together. I remember telling Mom, she had like a peanut butter fruit. It was amazing. I saw her peanut butter. You just scoop it out and you just put it on. I don't know. It's amazing. And she's like, Steve, peanut butter. It's butter made out of Exactly right. So anyway, but so my wife makes amazing guacamole. Doesn't like it, refuses to taste it. Okay, but she'll, like, my sister loves guacamole, so my sister comes to the house. Tambra will just make guacamole, serve it up, and my sister's like, "This is so amazing. What'd you do?" It's like, "I don't know. I didn't try it. I don't know what makes it good." So she has the skilled touch. Now my question, again, I always get sidetracked with you guys. So mole is a Mexican food sauce that's like based in chocolate, right? Is guacamole like mole, but it's made from guacas? Like, I'm serious. Like, I just wonder. It's like, oh, what kind of mole? This is mole. Oh, no. We've taken that process and now we've guaca'd the mole. We've added guac. I don't know. Like,
Mole is really dark brown.
yeah.
I mean, when you look
Well, no, but like, so instead of using chocolate, maybe I don't know if guaca, like,
at it, look like, if it's brown, mole brown, does it look brown?
I don't know. Like, I want to believe that the mole is there. Like, oh, it's the same basic process, but instead of chocolate, we use guacas, and so it's guacamole. So there is a fun. If I had my you would be in for a wonderful treat. I'm tempted to give you one of my boring linguistics lessons on the GU in the front of guaca. Has a wonderful way in which it affects linguistics. It is a holdover of, it's one of my favorite linguistic terms, the labio-velar. It's a gua, it's a w. Anyway, it's side note, which is completely, I would bore you to tears. More people would leave. It's like, it's really proof that the business meeting was more interesting. Because today, oh my goodness, if I was still a college professor, today is the day we'd be having class outside, right? It is amazing. In fact, we still might. We can just open the doors and go out there. I really am tempted. What? Let's go. I'll just yell. Oh. See, you're the guy, right? So in a college class, there's always the guy who's always trying to get you to go outside, and mainly it's because he didn't do his homework, and he wants the transition time, right? Because you get in, you spend about 5 minutes cajoling the teacher into having class outside, and then you have to transition to class. By the time you actually get out there and get started, your class is half over. And then there's all these people accosting you on the way. So I'm on to you. Now, are y'all fighting again? Because Dennis and Sally, you coming between this couple? Okay. What? Oh, okay. You're staying safe. Oh, so is she social distancing from you or vice versa? Oh, there you go. Okay, I stepped in something. I'm going to step out real quick, and so we're. Anyway, but it was a beautiful day. I'm really sad that we have to be inside now, and you have to listen to me talk after a business meeting. But I was going to ask you this one question. I was thinking about this a lot. Someone, when it comes to, I was thinking about like, car etiquette and parking lot and driver etiquette recently. Is there any sort of particular small little driving maneuver that other people make that when they make it just absolutely annoys you? Like beyond what it should? Right. Well, now, y'all don't realize that Houston cars don't come with turn signals. Like that's the Houston edition doesn't come with a brake or a turn signal, right? It's just gas and maybe a clutch, right? Which is different for the Dallas edition, because of the Cowboys. Any Dallas edition car always breaks down in December and doesn't come with a clutch. So, So not to use your turn signal. Me too. That annoys me, but I'm used to it in Houston. What else? What's one driving maneuver like that just drives me crazy?
Stopping on the freeway and then trying to get off.
Oh yes, I actually was thinking about this the other day. I can take you to the spot where I saw a person. There's some point where you realize you missed the turn. Your fate now is to go down, take the whoop around, and come on back. But no, I watched a guy get on a highway, realize he didn't want to, and then back up. No. Okay, what else? Yeah, see, that doesn't qualify as a minor thing, right? Like, you are allowed to be completely freaked out if somebody is coming the wrong way at you. Okay. No. Okay. So this happened recently. There was an accident. The West Park Tollway, which has a really interesting, counts as one of the most boring books I've ever read, which actually was interesting to me but boring to everyone else. I was in a doctor's office one time and I found a book called A History of Houston Highways.
Which doctor was that?
Exactly right. So it was an insomnia doctor, right? It's like we don't need you to have, just take this copy of this book. It's what we give to insomniacs who don't respond to strong drugs. And so what's cool is all the Houston highways were planned out in the 50s by this group of people, and there's been slowly building it out. And the West Park Tollway was built on the on an easement, on a train easement. Right. The Corpus Christi and Aransas Pass. In fact, they just took out the bridge. Used to, in downtown Fulshire, used to take a left. It used to go over the tracks and over the bridge. The bridge is still there, but that's why it's so narrow at certain spots. But it's hard to get on and off it. And so going down to HB, you get off on Fondren, but there's no exit going west on Fondren, so you have to go down to Gessner. And so a lot of people, evidently, there's some nightclubs down there and people who overindulge and they get on. It's happened just recently. Someone got on West Park Tollway going the wrong way because they went up the entrance. They went up an exit. And what's crazy is the cop was like, they're in the process of alerting people that this happens frequently at this intersection. And they said, what do you do when it happens? Well, you get into the, you get into the inside lane. Because if a person thinks they're going on the wrong way of the road, they don't realize it, they're going to naturally default to their lane. Right? They're going to try, and so you don't try to, we want to go outside, we want to go towards the curb, but no, you have to go to the inside because that way it's sad that you have to have that rule in your head, but yeah, you're allowed to be freaked out by that, Bob. Like, so what's seemingly minor traffic thing that really kind of blows your mind when it happens? Kind of infuriates you beyond, what?
Being in the wrong lane of a roundabout. When people use the left lane to go, like, first exit or
Yeah.
right to go all the way around.
Texan should, like that one by Buc-ee's, no one should have roundabouts in Texas. That's just wrong. We had one in my neighborhood, and they should not have them. It's unfortunate. Yep. No Texan knows how to use it. What else?
People who want to exit, but they don't think they're in the inside lane, 3 lanes across, and they
Yeah.
all of a sudden they want to exit.
Yeah. Yep.
Cell phones.
So, my favorite cell phone related thing that's ever happened. I was driving, and I was talking on the phone, and back before Bluetooth, and I was driving like this, and I got too close to the guy in front of me, and to illustrate, in order to lecture me on the dangers of driving with a cell phone, he proceeded to do a more dangerous thing than I was doing. He slowed down more than he needed to kind of, and then he rolled down his window and held his cell phone out the window, and with his other hand gave me a no, 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 no. I'm like, you don't got your either hand on the wheel. Like, it was literally no, no, no. Like, dude. Okay, like, dumb as I almost hit him, just like boom. A little jar. So,
So there were 2 of you on the road?
but so okay. So now one minor one, and this was it Immanuel Kant? Some famous philosopher said, was it mercy to the guilty is cruelty to the innocent? Okay. And I feel like this applies to people who are overindulgent with letting people pull in. Okay, like I just had this happen. We're in the left turn lane, and somebody who's made a poor driving choice trying to cut in, and now this person in front of me is letting them in, more people that need to get in, and now I'm not going to make the light. You are being kind to this person, but you don't realize you're being cruel to the person behind you. And what is it, like about the 4th or 5th car back in a left turn lane is the guy that really freaks out. Because the first 3 doesn't matter. You're making it through. The 4th one, the 5th one, you might not make it through on the left turn lanes. That's the guy who, when no one moves, that's the person who lays on the horn. Like, I'm not honking it. I'm honking around you. I'm going to go up there. So, but here's the one, and I'll just smile. Anyone else have another one you want to share?
Right-hand lane.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Here is, yeah. Okay, so the one thing, it happens a lot in Houston. All the lanes are open on a road, and you need to make a right turn. The light is red, and there's one car. What lane are they in? Oh my goodness. Like, no, I'm not gonna make it right just sitting there, right? Like, come on. I almost feel like you should be allowed to get in the left turn lane and go to make a right turn in front of them. Yeah, that's the one. I know it's not right. That's the one. I'm like, no, what are you doing? So, but hey, that's the world according to Steve on a Wednesday evening. Anyone else have another?
Interstate driving, string of cars passing a truck in the left lane. Somebody jumps out from behind, runs up behind the truck, and cuts over in front of you.
Oh yeah. So now I wish there'd be like a cruise control button that would manually take over your car. If you are driving on the highway in the left lane, and there is a car next to you going the same exact speed as you, then guess what? You're a moving roadblock, right? Like, I remember, like, I hate all the Sealy stuff, the traffic that's going on right now, but you know, there should be a thing that speeds you up and moves you over, or just speeds you up and get behind. It's okay, you can get in. But like, how many times you get into a traffic jam on I-10 going west because there's a truck in the right-hand lane not the speed limit, and there's another truck in the left-hand lane going not the speed limit. So, like, guess what? We're all not going the speed limit now. So, but because one last one. Okay, then we'll. So I appreciate the people who don't cut off, but like there's people need to learn to effectively merge, like the zipper, right? Like everyone alternate. But I don't like this idea that you can't use the whole road. Like a lane ends in 2 miles, better get over. No, we just shortened the road by 2 miles. If we all don't, let's all go to the end and we'll all merge, right? But there's always a person who's like, no, you just made the road this much shorter if you make everybody merge. Like my wife, the lane ends in 2 miles. I know, I'm gonna merge up there. Like that's we're gonna use the whole road. It's gonna be great.
So you're the guy that drives up on the left-hand side?
If they're not on the shoulder, but if there is road there, I'm going to use it. Like if there is a lane that no one is using, I am using it.
That's why I'll get between both lanes.
There you go. See, you're that guy. Well, you can do it too. Like this is the thing. Like let's just shut the lane down, right? If it merges in 2 miles, and let's shut it down 2 miles early, and we can all merge there. But then people will be like, oh, let's gonna do 2 miles before. Like let's just close the lane for 10 miles. Like no, let's just merge when we're all supposed to merge. It's okay. They did a study because this is what supercomputers are for, and they tracked what it would take to create traffic jams. People going 3 miles an hour over or 3 miles an hour under the speed limit are enough to cause a traffic jam.
I thought it was changing lanes too.
What? But yeah, because if you think about it, when people aren't going the same speed, the person who's going slower is effectively a roadblock. It's a stationary roadblock we all have to go around. But you might as well be a stationary roadblock if you're not going the speed limit because everyone has to go around you anyway because you're going slower than anybody else. But world according to Houston, right? Houston traffic is like infantry. It's like storming the beaches at Normandy. It's like keep moving forward at all costs. Just keep going. You can.
People that irritate me the most, though, is like if you have a right-hand lane, you're traveling just, say, north, and the right-hand lane signals you way back here with flashing lights saying there's road construction in the right-hand lane, merge left, and I hate it because I start merging left, so I can have time to get in and not stop and catch flies. I hate it when somebody goes zip, zip, zip by me and run up right to where the lights are.
That's me. I'm sorry, Jeanette. I won't do it to you. Let me know your car. I won't do it to you. But let's all just vow that we're going to use the whole road. Okay. I don't drive on the shoulder. I'm not driving, but I'm going to use the whole road. Merge. Like, no, I know where the exit is. It's 3 miles ahead. I'm not. Huh?
Can we change the subject? This is raising my blood pressure.
There you go. All right. Well, let's open up in prayer, and we'll dive into the study tonight. All right. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for this church. I thank you for this group of people. I thank you for the opportunities to be together and have a good time. Father, as we open your word now, I pray that you open our hearts as well. Show us those areas that you long to speak your truth into. I pray that we would open it to be challenged, to be nourished, to be equipped, to be uplifted. Show us the parts of our life that need to hear your word and have your truth applied to it. I pray this all in the name of Jesus. Amen. So we are coming to the end, not today, but we're almost to the end of our 2 Corinthians study. Next week, we will not have Wednesday night study. It's kind of wonky. This whole spring has been kind of wonky, off and on, off and on. But we're having another one of those restoring. I remember the worship night we had early March. Having another one of those, and we're having one of those next Wednesday. So we will not meet next Wednesday. But that gives you a perfect time. That means you have 2 weeks from today will be our last Wednesday. And it's Cinco de Mayo. Just saying. Okay? And so I don't know, plan accordingly.
We'll bring you an avocado.
Both mole and guac. Oh, I prefer my mole that's been guaca'd. Okay. So, exactly right. So anyway, we will meet May 5th, and that's the last, that will be the last Wednesday night. All right? Unless we want to start an underground Bible study, we'll meet someplace. And we're finishing 2 Corinthians. And tomorrow, or next Wednesday, we'll get to do the famous passage about the thorn in the flesh. I was sad looking back on it that we didn't highlight or emphasize one of my favorite funny passages in 1 Corinthians. In 1 Corinthians 9, where Paul talks about buffeting his body and making it his slave. We should have talked about buffeting the body, right? That's like one of my favorite I don't know how many times I've heard youth. I buffet my body. Let's open up a Christian restaurant. That'd be the theme, right? Like buffet your body. So, but no. Next week we're going to look at the famous passage in 2 Corinthians 12 about the thorn in the flesh. Okay, that's where it comes from. That His God's strength is manifest in our weakness and what that means. But today we're going to look at 2 Corinthians 10 and 11, these two chapters, and it's an interesting question. In it, Paul is dealing with the issue of his own credibility. Remember last week we talked about giving, and he is trying to raise money to send back to the poor people in Jerusalem, the poor Christians in Jerusalem, and he's having to do things like, okay, this is why you should give, this is what God is doing, I'm not trying to steal money from you, this is not so that you have to work hard and other people have it easy. And then he has to have this whole section where he deals with, look, you're going to give it to trustworthy people. Well, chapter 10 and 11, maybe your headings say, Paul describes himself and Paul defends his apostleship. The reason why is because he is having to say, look, this is why you can trust me. And that's what was going on. I remember a little bit of background. Some people came for 1 Corinthians was written because Paul received a letter of people saying, look, there's some problems going on in Corinth. Can you help us out? So Paul writes 1 Corinthians, dealing with some issues. And then between 1 and 2 Corinthians, we have the references to what he calls a painful visit, where he was evidently accused and made to feel terrible in some way. And then he wrote what's called the sorrowful letter. Sorrowful that he kind of criticized them and said, look, you shouldn't have allowed this happen. And he caused them sorrow. And then he writes 3 Corinthians to hear that they've repented. But it turns out there's some tension that's going on in the Corinthian church over people who've come in behind him to try and gain their own audience and get their own credibility. And they've done it at the expense of Paul. They keep saying things like, he's not a real apostle. If he was a real apostle, he'd be doing X, Y, and Z, and he's not doing X, Y, and Z. And so therefore, you shouldn't listen to him. You should listen to us. It's a common problem and criticism. It happens even today in the American church. One of the problems sometimes is that we get so insular and we're not actually focused on evangelism and seeing the gospel transform the culture, that a lot of times all the churches end up doing is shuffling the sheep, right? Like I'm going to get mad, I'm going to go over to this church, and new members aren't new believers. They're people who just got mad at the different church and they're coming to ours. Well, guess what? We lost some to that church too. We just kind of shuffle the sheep every now and then, but not actually expand the kingdom. Well, Paul in these chapters, while he's defending his apostleship and describing himself and defending himself from these attacks, he does a great job of showing us what life as a believer, life as a pastor is supposed to be like. And maybe challenging a little bit of some of our assumptions about what we're looking for. So I want to ask you this. It's a question of credibility. What makes you willing to believe somebody? Ever thought about this? What makes a person believable or credible? That's the kind of guy I want to listen to. Any thoughts? Reputation. Like when you say reputation, what do you mean? Like who they are. This could be a lot of things. You could have.
What are they known for?
Okay, yeah. What are they known for in general? If they are known, what are they known for? And you can be known for your success, your business successes. You can be known for your education. You can be known for some other thing, right? Yeah, your reputation. What else? Transparency. What do you mean?
I just mean, if they're willing to share their warts, with you, you're more likely to open up.
Okay, being genuine, right? Like this is who I'm being honest. You want to believe them if you feel like they're being honest with you. Yeah. What else? Chew on. That's what we're talking about. Because what's happened is people are trying to say Paul's not a real apostle, and here's how you know. One of the reasons why I bring this up is because a little bit my own story. One of the things that I've seen on the landscape of the American church for the last maybe 30 or 40 years is you have churches who are looking for pastors to not necessarily be pastors, but to be entrepreneurs. Right? I don't know how many times I've gone to churches and gone to conferences where someone hands me a business management book and says, "Oh man, this guy's not a believer, but all these things apply to how you run a church." Like, I don't know if it does. I'm not saying there are not things we can learn. I'm not saying, but like maybe my job at a company is to grow the company. My job at a generate revenue or whatever. I'm not sure all of the same priorities transfer over into the church. But what we've seen though is the need for pastors to kind of pursue this. I switched notebooks, so I don't have that quote anymore in my Bible. I switched to have a new notebooks and new stickers. But in front of my old notebook, I had a phrase. The vocation of pastor has been replaced by the strategies of religious entrepreneurs with business plans. And that's what was happening. People who were just like, God has called me to this, and this is what I'm going to be doing, and this is how I'm going to be doing. This is who I am. And so Paul says. Paul's like, here is who I am. Look what he says in 2 Corinthians 10. Now I, Paul, myself urge you by the meekness and gentleness of Christ, I who am meek when face to face with you, but bold towards you when absent. I ask that when I am present, I need not be bold with the confidence with which I propose to be courageous against some, who regard us as if we walk according to the flesh. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not walk according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but divinely powerful for the destruction of fortresses. So he gives you sort of a playbook for spiritual warfare, the work that he's actually going to be engaged in doing. And he starts by talking about his own attitudes. He goes, look, yeah, I wrote you a bold letter, and one of the criticisms evidently was it happens over in verse 10. It gets explicitly repeated. His letters are weighty and strong, but his personal presence is unimpressive and his speech is contemptible. That was evidently a criticism of Paul. It's like, oh yeah, he can write a good letter, but have you seen him in public, in presence? He's not that guy. He's a weakling. He's not the guy you want to have preaching in front of you. He's like, my attitude is not of arrogant boldness. He uses the phrase meek and gentle when I'm present, like Christ. Meek and gentle. Bold to you when absent, but he expresses the boldness in terms of courage. There's two kinds of boldness. I think there's two kinds of meekness. We're told, Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. He's not talking about weakness. Most of us, when we hear meekness, we think weakness. That's not what meekness is. Meekness is gentleness, and you can only tell somebody who has the capacity for not being gentle to be gentle. Meekness is the willingness to believe that God is in control and can do what's up to him. Okay, there is a place for boldness, and Paul is bold in his letters. He speaks appropriately when it's right, but he says it requires him to be courageous, to do something he wouldn't normally do because he's sort of in a situation he wouldn't normally be in. There's a different kind of boldness that's rooted in arrogance, which is what those other people were doing. They figured out how to be charismatic in front of people, and they learned all the simple tricks and nonsense where you can manipulate people to do what you want. And he's like, that's not who you're supposed to be. I actually preached on this about a year ago, but in the Psalms, there's actually a quote there's a whole psalm where the phrase, the meek shall inherit the earth, Jesus is quoting Psalm 37. And in each of those places, that psalm gives us a picture of what meekness really is. He says, trust in the Lord and do good. So Psalm 37:3 says, trust in the Lord and do good. Most of us don't do good because we believe that we have to allow some sin to happen for us to get what we want. I have to do some shady financial dealing. I have to be kind of rude or mean here in order to get my way. It takes a great amount of trust to be righteous, because nobody does evil for evil's sake. We all do evil because we think we'll accomplish some good by allowing this little evil. No, trust in the Lord and do good. Verse 4, delight yourself in the Lord, and he'll give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he will do it. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Meekness is not about doing nothing. It's about doing what you can with what you have where you are. And when you can't do anything else, realize you don't have to worry about it. That you can trust God with the extra. All of us will reach a point when we butt up against the boundaries of this world, and there's nothing left for us to do. And according to one American philosopher, the waiting is the hardest part, right? And so you're trying to wait for stuff, and you're like going, I can't wait. I want to get over this hump. I want to get over this ridge. I want to get on to the next thing. And you go, no. That's actually the biblical definition of striving, I think. We all know Psalm 46:10, right? Be still and know that I am God. The Hebrew actually says, cease striving and know that I'm God. The call is not to do nothing. The call is to stop thinking it's all up to you. So Paul's like, look, I'm meek. I'm not weak. I'm not unable to do my job. I'm just realizing there's certain things that I can't control. And I'm going to be bold when I need to be bold, but that boldness requires a little courage on my part, because I realize I'm sort of in a unique situation. Questions or comments or thoughts about that? Meekness. So he tells us the attitude, the attitude of a spiritual warrior. The warfare he is engaged in, the kind of job he is going to do, requires meekness. Not inactivity, not resignation, but just refusal to go beyond the boundaries of what God has called him to do. He makes this point more explicitly in verse 13 of the same chapter. We will not boast beyond our measure, but within the measure of the sphere which God apportioned to us as a measure, to reach even as far as you. If we're not overextending ourselves, he's like, look, God has all given us a horizon. Someone once said that every one of us has a kingdom, and your kingdom is the range of your effective will. How far your will goes is your kingdom. And all of us wish our kingdom went a little further. And what do you do when you don't have control over certain things? Well, you have two choices. You can stumble into sin because you think that by doing it, you'll finally grasp something you want. All of us at some point will be in a dangerous situation where something we desperately want is just outside our grasp. Or something we desperately want to hold on to is falling out of our grasp. What you do in that moment is a choice between sin and meekness. Meekness is not resignation, it's trust. Trust in the Lord and do good. He goes, I'm meek, but here I'm courageous because I need to tell you some hard truths. He goes, verse 3, so after describing his attitude, he says, let me describe to you my tactics. For though we walk according to the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but divinely powerful for the destruction of fortresses. He goes, look, I can't use the same tactics as my enemies. This is a great lesson for every Christian who wants to be socially engaged with people who are unbelievers. We sometimes think we can use the same weapons as them. That's not what's going on. Christians, Jesus is not fighting a war. He's fighting a civil war. And his goal is that every person who's currently opposing him is to lay down their arms and for him to join his side. Every single person that is currently fighting against the cause of Christ is a person that is deeply loved by Christ and for whom Christ died and who has a place in God's kingdom if they'll surrender to it. Every one of us and every person you'll ever meet is like Paul, right? Breathing threats and angry to kill Christians and has the capacity for a Damascus Road experience. And so because of that, though we live in the flesh, we don't war according to the flesh, because our battlefield is not the same thing. And he goes on to say, probably one of the more famous passages in 2 Corinthians is, we are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God, and we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. Taking every thought captive. In these two passages, in these two things, he actually gives you a pretty good focus on not just how he goes about fighting his battles, but what he's fighting against. He says, the things I'm trying to get at are the bad ideas that find their way into our lives and set up strongholds. The words he uses, so at the end of verse 4 and in verse 5, so you want to have, so for the destruction of, my Bible says fortresses. You want to have a different word for strongholds? Anyone else have anything else? Fortresses, strongholds, and then we are destroying speculations and every lofty thing. You want to have a different words besides speculation and lofty things? Arguments and? Opinions. Yeah, arguments, opinions. He goes, look, this is what I'm doing. There are strongholds in your life, and those strongholds are actually bad ideas you believe. And it's almost like every single one of those bad ideas is like the negative version of the Battle of Bastogne. Right, the Battle of Bastogne. A lot of interesting facts. So my dad was in the military. I lived in Germany in high school, and I learned a fun fact over the last year, that I have been to the place where Hitler oversaw the Battle of the Bulge from. So it was a castle owned by Hermann Goering, and when the World War II was over, U.S. Army took it over, became a retreat center for the Fifth Corps chaplains. I've been to a youth retreat. I've been in the bunkers that Hitler was in, where he oversaw the Battle of the Bulge. But so, how did the Battle of the Bulge work, right? There was this winter assault where the Germans were attacking, and the only reason why it didn't succeed was because this crossroads town behind enemy lines was held by the American forces, who refused to surrender. And because that one little town was a stronghold, it destroyed the ability of the German army to move forward. Paul is saying that the exact same thing happens in our life, but negative. Like, we're not the German army, we're not trying to win the war. But like, we all have strongholds in our life. They're behind enemy lines, they're deep in our minds, and they're fortresses of bad ideas. And because they're there, they keep you from actually finding true freedom. Paul knows, the Corinthians know what he's talking about, because Corinth had a citadel or a fortress, just like Athens did. We've all seen the Athenian, anyone know what I'm talking about? The Acropolis, and with the Parthenon on top. That was, Acropolis literally means the high city. It was a fortress, and it was a place to retreat in time of war. By the way, it was one of my favorite ESPN Proof the Apocalypse is Upon Us. They asked a very famous player one time who had been in Athens for the World Basketball Championships or something like that. They asked him, so when you were in Athens, did you go to the Acropolis? To which he responded, man, I don't remember the names of half the clubs we went to. I'm like, oh, that hurts me. That hurts me. But so in the same thing was in Corinth too. There was Acrocorinth, the citadel above. And guess what? That citadel was a place you could retreat in time of war. Heck, today is San Jacinto Day, right? The Texas independence. And how were 200 people able to hold out against several thousand at the Alamo for a week? Eventually they fell, but it took them a while. Why? Because citadels or strongholds allow smaller numbers to defend against larger numbers. Paul is saying, you know what I'm doing? I'm waging war. And that battlefield is not territory. That battlefield is in your mind, and I'm on your side, and I'm trying to find those bad ideas in your brain that are holding you back from being the person God has called you to be. I'm taking every thought captive. He said, and this is the picture of what Jesus is doing. Jesus is not trying to destroy you. He is trying to get into your brain and destroy all those bad ideas that are holding you back from being who he called you to be. And that's one of the sort of processes of discipleship, the processes of sanctification. Why frankly the church still exists after you get saved? Why we keep coming? So that we can saturate ourselves with the truth of who God is and realize how much our minds still are full of those strongholds. What does Paul say in Romans 12? By the mercies of God, don't be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed. Why? How? By the renewing of your mind. So the conform to the pattern of this world literally means to have your mind stamped like a coin, right? Don't have your brain, your mind, your soul, yourself, and smush it. Don't let it be smushed into the mold of this world. It's one of those heartbreaking things I experienced so much in youth ministry was how many times youth ministries, back when I was in youth ministry, were tempted to try and gain people to come to your youth group by looking just like the world. But guess what? Churches have been doing that for the last how long? A buddy of mine and I in ministry came up with the phrase, what you win them with is what you win them to. and the truth is, for far too long, the American church specifically has been content to be a cheaply aped copy of a bankrupt culture. Peter stood up at Pentecost and he said, you got to get saved. And they go, what should we do? They said they were cut to the quick after his sermon. And he goes, be baptized. And he says it kept exhorting them repeatedly to be saved from this wicked and perverse generation. The word for perverse literally is the word that gives us the same root as scoliosis. This culture has scoliosis, and we try to copy it. And it's easy to see when other people do it and it doesn't work, but the truth is finding those strongholds that we don't realize were there and to let it, to try and let them get filtered out. I think, can you even think of maybe some strongholds that persist in our minds? Maybe not us specifically, but in general, you look at American Christians, some strongholds that persist, that are holding us back from being who God called us to be. What? Yeah, it's weird. Our prayers frequently are for deliverance from suffering and the increase of our material possession. God does want to bless you. But I'm always startled by the fact that when Peter and John are persecuted in Acts, they gather together and they pray to God. They say, God, we are being persecuted like crazy. Help us to speak boldly. They don't ask to be delivered from the persecution. They realize that they're precisely at the spot where the fight is happening, and they want to stay there, and they want courage to continue the fight. But this idea that you will be happy if you have more stuff, right? The lie. That's what I love about our Kings of the Mission Statement. Inviting all people to experience true fulfillment in Jesus Christ. All of us think there's something that will give us true fulfillment. And what is it? What does your life indicate it? What do you spend your money on? What do you spend your time on? What do you spend your brain power thinking about? And John in 1 John 2 gives us this phrase. He goes, don't love the world or the things in the world. And he doesn't mean us, because that's the same John who wrote God so loved the world. He means the sinful part of the world. He goes, for all that's in the world is passing away. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life. It's not the things in the world, but it's how we misuse the things of the world. The lust of the flesh. Thinking that you will be happy and fulfilled if you have increased pleasure. Okay, we had the sexual revolution a generation ago. Whether it's food or drink, whether it's travel, if you think the experience is the thing that you're missing to give your life fulfillment, guess what? Lust of the flesh. Lust of the eyes, thinking that possession will make you happy. That the world is full of all these shiny objects that get dangled in front of us saying, life could be meaningful if you just had this. I heard a guy say one time, commercials are the parables of our generation. And they don't tell us this engine has a 2.5 liter horsepower. Every single commercial tells a story. And that story is the life you could have if you had this product. Lust of the eyes. Boastful pride of life. It's the lie. It's the lie that you will find true fulfillment if you can find a way to elevate yourself over other people. If I could boast about my life in some way. Look at me, I am blah, blah, blah. I'm better than you because of this reason. Whether it's because I have more education than you, or because I got the promotion you didn't get, or because I have a bigger house than you, or because we can do it. We can find reason to elevate ourselves for any reason. Like Dr. Seuss wrote a whole book, right? Like was it the Sneetches, the star-bellied Sneetches had bellies with stars, the plain-bellied Sneetches had none upon theirs. It's all about how I got a star on my belly and you don't. And then how all of us find reason to elevate ourselves to other people, but if you think that's going to make you happy, you're wrong. Those are strongholds in our brain that persist. I look at American culture, I think, but none of these are bad things. They're all bad when they're elevated to the rank of giving you the supreme source of true fulfillment. God wants to bless you. God filled the world with opportunities to enjoy it. God does want to provide for you, and he will give you possessions, the things that you need. God does have a place for you in his kingdom, and he promises that you'll find it. And so all those things aren't bad. They're wrong when you elevate them to a certain level. Same with this. I think, the persistent drive in America to think that politics will solve all our problems. But what's weird when I say, let's talk, I totally agree. The problem is those other people in the other party are the problem. No, you think there's a political solution and there's not, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't be involved in politics. Okay, all of us, because of the structure of our government, you should be actively involved in politics. But guess what? I think a lot of American Christians have turned politics into their god. That they come to church and that's what they worship is their political party. I'm not saying what we believe doesn't correlate to how you should be act or vote, but it's a stronghold if you believe that is the source of your true happiness and fulfillment. Guess what? I think the Declaration of Independence might be one of the greatest pieces of political philosophy ever written on the face of the planet. I also believe that people had happy, fulfilled lives living under the tyrant of King George III, right? That they live, it's possible to have truly fulfilled lives living under a corrupt form of government. It happens all the time. So maybe, just maybe, the belief that politics will solve all our problems is a radical lie that's a stronghold in the American mind. There's others. I'm not trying to pick ones. If I stepped on your toes, I'm sorry. There are. The goal is to try and get these things out, not so that you can be deprived of something you think is valuable, but so that the things that God has created can find their proper place, and so can you. To free you up from the thing that's allowing the enemy to stay behind enemy lines. I think the pleasure thing is a big thing right now. Most of the problems in our society is, look at the sensuality that plagues most of us. And the way our society sells things like that, it can be debilitating to people. To free you up from it. Wow. I got through 5 verses. The rest of the chapter is about authority. And look at verse 7 real quick. You are looking at things as they are outwardly. If anyone is confident in himself that he is Christ, let him consider this again within himself, that just as he is, so also we are. For even if we boast somewhat further about our authority, which the Lord gave for building you up and not for destroying you, I will not be put to shame. He raises this idea of authority. God gave me authority to do a certain job, and I'm doing it not to crush you, but to build you up. It's a window into the true nature of biblical authority. There are 2 kinds of authority, and both of them are necessary, and both of them have their place. There's one kind of authority that's kind of positional authority, right? You have authority because of the position you hold. If you've ever said, because I'm the dad, that's why, you are exercising positional authority. If you ever said, because I'm the boss, that's why. My dad was in the military. You salute the rank. You don't salute the man. You salute. There's a different kind of authority too. And that second kind is called charismatic authority, or I don't know if there's a better word for it. And it means people who are followed because they demonstrate that they are trustworthy people who should be believed. This is one of the big mistakes that the American military made when first dealing with Native Americans. That a lot of, specifically the Comanche in Texas, the Comanche didn't have the chief in a Comanche village, had no positional authority, had no ability because of this position to compel your obedience. It was just, hey, when that guy moves the village, it'd be a good idea you don't have to follow him, but you should, because when he moves a village, he knows when it's time, and you can trust him. Oh, when that guy goes on a raid, you don't have to follow him. But when he goes on a raid or he goes hunting, good stuff happens. He knows where the buffalo are. It's nothing about his position could compel their obedience. But everybody trusted his decisions. And so we'd be foolish to disregard him at his risk. And Paul's saying, look, eventually you need both. Some positional, respect me because I have this role, but I want you to follow me because you trust me. There's going to come a time when you don't understand what I'm doing, and that's when the position and the trust I have in the bank falls. You fall back on. But someone who is only leaning into positional leadership, positional authority, is doing it to crush you, right? The Paul says, look, I'm not doing this to destroy you. Whatever I'm doing to build you up because I'm trying to free your mind from the strongholds that are keeping you in bondage. And the rest of the chapter is about boasting. But I want to get through 11. And so chapter 11, mainly the end, Paul gives his spiritual resume. Okay? I've had to put together countless resumes, and it gets tedious over time. You list all your experience, you list your qualifications, you list your education, you list your skills, the computer program. It's all the computer programs, and now you have to write the tagline, where you like a summary of who you are. You haven't done this? You ever read a friend's resume and like, wow, that sounds like a pretentious jerk. Like that's how I wouldn't hire me. I don't know. We always brag a little bit on our resumes, but what would make a qualified pastor? What are the hallmarks? What do you look for? And I say this both jokingly because one of the reasons y'all are stuck with me here at Kingsland is because I do not have a pastor quality resume. I fall exactly between two worlds. I am too pastoral to be a good professor. Universities have no idea what to do with me. And I am too professorial to be a good pastor. Churches don't know what to do with me. And so y'all are like hot potato. Y'all are the last ones holding me. And so y'all are just stuck. And that's just the way it goes. But
How do you know that for sure?
what?
How do you know you're not qualified to be a pastor?
Well, because here's the deal. I've had people tell me,
I'm sure they told you also you are qualified.
excuse me. Here's why. Because one, there's educational qualifications, right? It's one of those things I kick myself on all the time, foolishly, because I think about how God led me. But at the end of college, I've always felt called to ministry since my freshman year in college. But at the end of college, there was a fork in the road. I had to choose between seminary or graduate school. And seminary I was going to have to pay for, and graduate school I got a scholarship. They're gonna pay all the tuition and give me some money extra to go. I'm like, okay, God is leading this way. I know that's God leading, but guess what? I don't have a seminary degree. And the church is like, no seminary degree, no pastor. No seminary. There's somebody just filtering through resumes like that. It's one of those weird things. There's an educational credential, because one of the things education is supposed to do. But in our mind, we have our idea about what it means to be a pastor. Why do y'all tolerate me? Because I started talking one day and people started listening. I guess I was listening to him. I started talking before people could figure out what was going on, and I'd shut up since. So there's if I ask you to list the qualifications of an American pastor, and we would come up with I think about all the job applications I've seen. It's a seminary degree, D-Min preferred, maybe from this seminary, 10 years of experience managing this size budget, blah, blah, blah. He goes through all of the qualifications that we expect a person who's going to run this big church, and maybe a big church. I mean, maybe experience with congregations over 1,000 people. We have all these expectations for what constitutes, and how do pastors themselves judge themselves? How do I know if I'm a successful pastor? Right? Looking at, I have this size budget, this many staff members, this size church, this many baptisms, this many whatever. It's interesting categories. My grandpa, who was a great man, who never pastored a church over 500 people, and mainly of his own fault. He kept splitting them. He kept planting new churches. Anytime he'd get too close to 500, he'd go, "Where all y'all live?" And he'd go plant a church in that neighborhood. How cool is this? There is a family at this church that my daughter's in their life group that grew up in a church that was planted by my grandfather. They didn't know my grandpa's name. Talk about Kingsland's attitude, Kingsland's commitment of selfless influence. You want to know how selfless influence? A Christian, someone like my grandpa, who no one ever know his name, but he never drew attention to himself. He's like, we're going to expand the kingdom, and I'm going to do it. I don't need the audience. I don't need people to hear my voice. I need people to know the truth. And he had a phrase I still repeat to myself: God doesn't have any little churches. You know, there's no such thing as big churches and little churches. God doesn't have any little churches. And there's only one person who's in charge of the church, and that's Jesus. But Paul gives a real resume. See, people have been criticizing Paul. He's not good at public speaking. He's not good at being, in fact, they even accuse him, if you read closely, they accuse him for not taking a paycheck. One of the criticisms, believe it or not, of my pastoral resume is that I've been bivocational for most of my career, working at universities and at churches. Oh, you're not a real pastor. You don't have a full-time job as a pastor. Guess what? Paul was bivocational, and he was criticized for it in Corinth. He didn't take a paycheck from the Corinthians, and it was a criticism of him. That he wasn't a successful pastor who could make his money doing this. He's working over at the garage, making tents. And so Paul gives his real spiritual resume. Look at starting in verse 21 of chapter 11. To my shame, I must say that we have been weak by comparison. But whenever respect anyone else is bold, I speak in foolishness. I am just as bold myself. He said, basically, I'm going to do what they're doing. I'm going to tell you why I think I'm an apostle. Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they descendants of Abraham? So am I. Are they servants of Christ? I speak as if I'm insane. I'm more so. And why? Why is he? Because I have a bigger church. Because I have a bigger payroll. Because I have a bigger staff. Because I have more education. No. In far more labors, in far more imprisonments, beaten times without number, often in debt, often in danger of death. 5 times I received from the Jews the 39 lashes, the flogging that could have killed Jesus. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I spent in the deep. One of the times we know that he was brought outside the city from the book of Acts. Paul is stoned, mob violence basically. They thought they killed him. He had been beaten so thoroughly, they thought they killed him. The disciples went out to get him, to bury his body. He comes to, and he goes back into the city that did it. Okay? That's Paul. He goes, I have been on frequent journeys, in dangers from rivers, dangers from robbers, dangers from my countrymen, dangers from Gentiles, dangers in the city, dangers in the wilderness, dangers on the sea, dangers among false brethren. I've been in labor and hardship through many sleepless nights, in hunger and thirst, often without food, in cold and exposure. Apart from such external things, there is the daily pressure on me of concern for all the churches. Who is weak without my being weak? Who is led into sin without my intense concern? If I have to boast, I will boast in what pertains to my weakness. The God and Father of the Lord Jesus, he who is blessed forever, knows that I'm not lying. In Damascus, the ethnarch under Aretas, the king, was guarding the city of Damascus in order to seize me. And I was let down in a basket through a window in the wall, and so escaped his hands. He goes, he's not bragging. He's actually saying, it's almost embarrassing. You want to know what I'm most proud of? They lowered me in a wall. They put me in a basket, and they dropped me outside the wall like I was luggage. Like I was garbage. That is his spiritual resume. Do you know what he says? You know why I know I'm a servant of Christ? Do you know what it's cost me? It's weird. We talk about success. You ever get tired of like preachy celebrities, no matter what they're preaching about? I'm just tired of preachy celebrities, and I hate it when a celebrity stands up and does something that they know everybody will agree with them on, and immediately the press is like, oh, they're so brave. No, they risk nothing. They were going to be applauded for that position, no matter what it was. They're going to be patted on the back. That wasn't a brave position. What does it cost you to be a follower of Jesus? Paul goes, you know what it's cost me? He knows he's bragging. He's like, look, it's cost me. It's cost me. I've been in danger. I've been beat. I've spent 24 hours on the open water by myself in a shipwreck. I've been in prison. I've been almost killed. Not just that, I'm worried all the time. Not for my own safety, but for all the believers. I want to make sure y'all are growing in Christ. I care about you guys. I think about you guys all the time. You know what's cost me? It's cost me my dignity. I got put in a bag of trash and dropped out the city wall. That's what I'll boast about. That's how you know I'm a real pastor. That's what Paul's saying. the two things I thought of when I read this was, one, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. We're coming up on the anniversary of his death. Like, it was just recently, right? It was Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German pastor famous for cost of discipleship. He actually was given a position at Union Theological Seminary in 1939 to escape Germany and the Nazis. And he intentionally went back to Germany, and he said, I will have no part. I would not have a part in rebuilding Germany after this is all over if I'm not present in the midst of its suffering. He went back to Germany, and he was hanged a week before Berlin was liberated. Okay? He suffered. He thought that the cost of his own discipleship, that the proof of his own apostleship was suffering. The other thing was, I heard in a missions conference one time, I heard the description of a Christian from Cambodia who had lived through the killing fields of Pol Pot in the 70s, right? One of the great mass murderers of the 20th century, and killing Christians like crazy, eliminated a whole generation of people. And he said that there was a phrase, people weren't saying it to brag, people weren't saying it as a new form of badge of honor, but there became a phrase, he's a real pastor, he's been in prison. You know, it was like, that was the qualification, not how much money he had, not how big his church was, not how much education he was, not what influence he carried with political leaders. The badge of honor was that the sign of his credibility, his calling card and resume was, this guy's been in prison. It has cost him something to be a follower of Jesus. He is somebody worth following because he's fighting on the right battlefield. That's what Paul's trying to say. I don't know where this is hitting you. I don't know. Maybe you've been a person who like has been wanting to fight a battle but been using the wrong tactics. Maybe God's calling you to meekness. Maybe you've felt oddly boxed in by God, and you feel like the stuff that you feel like your influence is shrinking. You don't know how to get to where you feel like God is calling you to be. And God's saying, look, just trust me. Try meekness first. Stop striving and trust that I'm God, and you can trust me and rest in me and delight in me and commit your ways to me and see if I won't do what I said I would do. Maybe there's strongholds in your life that God's trying to tear down. And he's saying, look, maybe you need to just be open to the idea that you're believing some lies, and those lies have a foothold in your brain, and those lies are keeping you from being who I've called you to be. And part of it is just recognizing priorities. What do you value, and who do you follow, and why? Let's pray. Father, thank you for Paul and for his willingness to humble himself and in meekness trust you. Help us to be like that. Help us to take every thought captive. Show us the strongholds. Give us the confidence and the trust to surrender to a community like Kingsland that can help us see those strongholds in our own life and to demolish them. Show us those footholds that the enemy still has in our lives and help us to get them out. Help us to trust you that you have not relinquished your throne and still are in control. In all those ways we feel stressed or anxious, we feel tempted to strive, and we feel like we should allow some sin in our life to accomplish some greater good. Father, give us the willingness to just rest, to be meek, to trust in you, to commit our ways to you, to delight in you, and to see you do it. Father, help us to follow good people. Put people in our life worthy of following, worthy of imitation, people that we can look to, that can lead us, not religious entrepreneurs who have business plans and can just further the strongholds in our own life, but lead us with people who can show us how you want to grow your kingdom in our midst. I pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. All right. Any questions, comments, criticisms, rebuttals, revisions, hilarious rejoinders? Well, get on up out of here. Depart from me, all ye who practice lawlessness. I've grown tired of you.
San Antonio blend.
That's your go-to?
Chocolate, vanilla, and cinnamon.
See, that's where this one came from. So family in the back. So it's Mexican chocolate. It's that. San Antonio blend is good stuff. Uh-huh.